Hey, what's up, y'all? This is indeed the E-Man, chilling like a villain, singing like Bob Dylan, keep it on the low with some double stuff. Oreos. And man, everybody knows me, know that I love movies, man. Movies are my jam, movies are my bread and butter. And I'm honored. I can't believe what I'm about to say. One of my favorite movies, and I've talked about this before. I talked about this on the Super Mario Brothers episode, where like the question with Rose and came about like which movie is my favorite video game movie, and I mentioned The Wizard. And never in a million years did I think I thought today was going to happen. I was going to be able to talk to this man. But before I introduce him, I want to introduce my co-host. My co-host is a truly talented friend of mine. He's a writer, he's an actor, he's a composer, he's a director. You might recognize him from such award winning short films like Earworm, but he was also in a really great short film called 21 Questions. Currently, audio horror series called Dead Meat Pete, which is really fantastic. He was also on my podcast twice, episodes 11 and 38. I want to give a big round of applause for my friend, Chris Gervais. What's happening, Chris? How you doing?
Good. Thank you very much. This is very flattering. You might recognize me as a soft might. It's a very soft might with a lowercase m.
Lowercase. I really love 21 Questions. You know that. Thanks for coming on the show, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely, man. And next up, I want to introduce this Emmy Award winning director, writer, producer. You might recognize a lot of his work. He worked on the Larry Sanders Show, Amazing Stories, and Malcolm in the Middle. He also directed a few films, Firehouse Dogs. But you might recognize this is the film I love. Back in '89, he directed a gem of a movie called The Wizard, starring Fred Savage and Luke Edwards. And I'm honored to have Mr. Todd Holland on the Special Delivery Show. What's going on, Mr. Holland? How you doing today?
Hey guys. Woo! Hey man. Hey Chris. Nice to be here.
Yes. So how's the weather over there in your neck of the woods today?
It's a little toasty in California. Not too bad. We're in LA, so we're not as bad as like Fresno or up north where we have relatives there. It's double digits, not triple digits here. So
yeah.
Well, where are you guys based? I don't even know.
I'm in the Charlotte area.
Okay.
We're both in the Charlotte,
okay.
North Carolina. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's nice. It's like around 80 something today. So all of my podcasts, I always ask, the childhood, the origin story, and I think every hero has an origin story. And you were born in Meadville, Pennsylvania.
Meadville. Does this help you?
Meadville, Pennsylvania. Yeah. And I just wanted to know, like, what was your childhood like? What was your favorite cereal? What was it like growing up there? And how did that place shape you as a person?
I love this question because I always start with all characters when I'm writing. And I always think, well, what was their home life like? Where did they grow up? Who were their parents? How were they? So I love this question. I actually was born outside of Pittsburgh in a little tiny town called Katanning, Pennsylvania. And then we moved to Ohio while my dad was outside of Cleveland when my dad was doing his ophthalmology residency. And then we moved to Meadville when I was 5. So I'm kind of, it's so funny when I first started directing, started getting notoriety, the local paper would call me a former Countian. And then as I got more success, they claimed me as a native. So it's just funny that originally I was like someone who used to live here. And then as I got more successful, I was then a Meadville native. So that's a funny thing about small town papers. I grew up all my formative years were in Meadville. It's a town of 18,000 people. It was the county seat. So we had the county courthouse and the sort of downtown, we had it called Diamond Park. You have the park with the Civil War cannons in it. You must have those in Charlotte. You know what I mean? You have all the statues and all that stuff in the band shell. And so it was really an idyllic place to grow up. I would walk to school. Nobody, that day and age, nobody took you to school. You grabbed your books and you schlepped out the door by yourself. I have an older brother and sister and a younger brother. So there's 4 of us total. My dad was an eye doctor and my mom was a housewife, and so honestly, Meadville shaped me in that I do love small town stories. I understand small town stories, I think, more than I understand big city stories. I didn't like California at all when I moved here. It took me 2 years. I was completely miserable. And I realized I was making this tectonic shift between a town of 18,000 to UCLA, which was 36,000 just for the school, in a town of 5 million at the time. So I realized and plus there was no seasons. There's no seasons that I could discern at the time. Yeah. As you live here longer, you feel the seasons, but I say the seasons back east are like, they hit you like a baseball bat. Out here, it's this subtle shift in the light, and it's, you know, difference in rainfall, and at least in the old days. So I really missed, I was very on edge, not having all those signals. I love autumn. I love the atmosphere of autumn. I love rain. I love clouds. I'm still, I think, one of those. I Googled it. It's a real thing. Like there's 10% of people with seasonal affective disorder have the opposite. Like blue skies bum me out. You know, wow. I like clouds. I like rain. I like overcast. And Meadville was in the snow belt. So we were overcast 300 days a year. You know, it was really close to Oregon. You know, it was the second highest rainfall next to Oregon. And so I really loved the moods of my town were very cinematic to me. Like I always think when it rains or snows, I feel like I'm in a movie. Yeah. But when it's not doing anything, or when it's windy, any kind of weather, I feel like I'm in a movie because it's setting a very specific vibe. You know what I mean? But when it's just sunny out, and it's nice, and there's nothing, I feel like I don't know what that is. I'm not sure how to feel about that. And so, and I had great friends in my hometown, and I ended up in high school. I was kind of my husband and I have triplet 13-year-olds, 2 girls and a boy, and they're much better adjusted at 13 than I was. I was like a total shit show in 7th grade. I was a mess. I was a nerd and a mess, and really had a lot of problems. And so I got my act together in high school, and I became president. I was really unpopular in middle school, and I became popular in high school, and I convinced people to make movies with me. You know, because it was like, so we did these big grand projects. We had a lot of adventures. I was always the person who could convince people to do some crazy ass thing. And because I love group efforts, which is teeing me up for working with a company, working with a crew, making people feel valued in that effort. So my small town was very idyllic. I don't want to live there again as a gay man, and you know, I'm married to a black man, and you know, I just don't want to live in a tiny town anymore. So, and I have mixed race kids, and I just not what I want. But I do love it, and I value the childhood I had there. I left at 18 to go to UCLA, and I have never lived there again. So
I really love that you said that you were always good at getting people to do things, because it's like, as a filmmaker, I'm out here in the weeds. That component of directing and filmmaking is so hard to find. It's rare among most of the creatives that I know. And that's like I know so many super talented filmmakers that they don't have that skill. And it's you can't make movies without that ability.
You know, I did some a lot of I agree totally. And I always thought I would be Steven Spielberg, and I'm not getting there, and I didn't get there. Then I started assessing, and I realized there's a lot of reasons Steven Spielberg is Steven Spielberg, and a lot of opportunities and lucks and situations. But you know, and there's a lot of reasons I succeed more than other people, because it's like all these intangible qualities of. But one thing I do have, and it's become over time. I don't know when it happened. I had a couple of bad experiences where really, you know, careers are always difficult. But I realized somewhere in the last 20 years, it became, I have 2 goals. One is to make the very best possible piece of film I can create. And the other goal is to make sure this company bonds as a company, and they feel valued, and they're heard, and they know I respect them and what they do. So, and if I don't achieve that, if I can't achieve that, then I feel like I failed, no matter how good the thing is, you know? So I'm always working now on these 2 fronts. And even when I do episodic gigs, what's hilarious is I did an episode of 30 Rock, my first episode, not working on my own shows, where I did the pilot and then I produce and I do the episodes, you know, so I went and did this outside director for hire episode of 30 Rock. because I've only worked for myself for 10 years on my own shows. I went to 30 Rock and it took me like I was well into the shoot. So I was there like 8 days before I realized, oh, these people don't already love me. Because when you do your own shows, you're the dad. You've hired the cast, you made the pilot, you got it happen, you made it happen, it got picked up. So you're the dad. Everyone loves you, everyone turns to you, everyone respects you. It was so funny, but it's going into a job with this delusion that everybody loves you and being generous in that act, not arrogant, being generous and being full of gratitude at every step. I mean, you can be arrogant and assume everyone loves you, and then that's bullshit, basically. But to approach your work from a point of generosity and welcoming people into the process and that it worked, even though I realized I was an idiot. Like, I didn't realize Tina Fey didn't already love me. Anyways, but big part of my job is making the company bond. And I was like doing Grace and Frankie. And I remember like day 4 of a 5-day shoot, some grip passes me and just puts his hand on my back because he moves. I go, oh, I got them. Like, he didn't have to do that. I've won them over. And I always look for those little signs. Like, I did a show called Sons of Tucson. And I really wanted this flashback that wasn't scripted of this boy at this Christmas concert. And it was just going to make the whole story work better. But there was no time to shoot it. And the social worker is like standing there waiting to pull this 12-year-old boy off the set. And we finished all the stuff that's scripted. I said, okay, now they said, get your flashback. And I was expecting to turn around and see this Christmas set constructed. And there was a roll of cotton batting and there was nothing. And I had 5 minutes and the social worker's there. And I just fell to my knees and I started tearing this cotton batting into pieces to make snow, and then suddenly I look over and there's the key grip is tearing cotton batting and the DP is tearing cotton batting and the prop master is doing it. And I realized that's what a company should be, where everybody's in it together and they feel valued enough that they'll do that. They wanted me to get that. And they were willing to, and I wanted it. So I was showing that I wasn't going to be angry and have a fit and blame people that it wasn't ready. I was just going to make it happen. And I think that's big part of the energy that wins people over. Is blame is just the biggest virus in my business. And you just got to know, you just have to accept that you're hiring people who are going to come and to do their best work for you. And if you are going to accuse them of not, or if they're not doing good work, you have to replace them. But if you're going to hire them, trust them to do good work and help them to understand what the goals are and give them feedback to keep moving in the direction that you see. But if you hire the right people, they're going to do that. People are super talented. It's amazing. So
it's amazing to hear. I love that. And I think that I always feel like you can feel that in the final product. I mean, clearly, there's a lot of these sort of giant, I'm not going to name names, but there's a lot of these sort of giant explosion-based flashy movies that the directors, everyone knows they're a jerk, and the movies don't really have any soul, and everyone in them is just sort of punching a clock. I think you can feel it.
Yeah. I made Firehouse Dog I made a show called Wonder Falls, which is, sadly, because of music licensing, relegated to DVD and illegal YouTube uploads. It's not streamable yet. I'm hoping it will be someday, but who knows? But I took my movie Firehouse Dog back to that same crew because I love them so much. The production designer just won and was nominated for an Oscar for what's the Midnight Show? What's it called? The Guillermo del Toro movie? What's it called?
Oh, Cabinet of Curiosities?
No, the movie before, the one about the carnival.
Shape of Water?
No, after that, The Dark Carnival. All set in the 40s. And anyways, doesn't matter.
Yes, Brad Cooper.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great movie.
Anyways, it was like a Midnight
Nightmare Alley.
Nightmare Alley. So she, incredible production designer that went on to become nominated for Academy Award. Anyways, but I took my movie back there, and then I would leave. And same thing happened making Monster High in Vancouver. I hear U.S. directors just bad-mouthing Canadian crews. And I go, I don't understand why you talk down to these people. These people are incredibly talented. Either you're hiring the wrong people or you're treating them wrong and you're not getting the best out of them. because these are amazingly talented people whom I adore on both coasts. And so I think there's this real, we'll get into this whole thing with movies versus television, and movie directors get pulled into this trap of movies are such a snake pit. Honestly, making a movie is such a snake pit of ego and power struggling. All my feature films have been that way. The Monster High is the only joyful movies I've made. I think directors get trapped, get pushed into a corner where they become egomaniacs because there's such a grab for power at every turn. The famous director, I'm gonna blank on his name, Witches of Eastwick. What's his name? Australian guy. He famously had a quote when he did after Witches of Eastwick. That was his first American movie, I think, American studio movie. And he said, whenever you hesitate to answer, people perceive it as weakness instead of like consideration or thoughtfulness. You know what I mean? And right. And I so related to that because when you're making a big movie, everybody just wants the director to say, boom, yes, that's what I want. That's my vision. And if you don't, somebody else is going to say it. And that's what slowly erodes your power on set. So I think a lot of directors are simply trained to be crazies, and then everyone expects directors to be crazies. So there's no trust between studios and directors because they always expect you to be crazy, but then you're kind of trained to be crazy. Because if I've had multiple times where I didn't fill the power vacuum, and that caused me tremendous trouble. The Wizard was a very, very, very difficult movie to make. So,
goodness, wow,
very painful.
Yeah,
Fred had no idea. Fred Savage had no idea. So anyways, that's my story about working with companies and building that team. It's so important. And basically all comes down to gratitude. Just gratitude. Be grateful for the work people are bringing you. Be grateful for the opportunity. My husband taught me these 5 magic words. I teach them all the time. In your worst possible moment, when you're most overwhelmed, just say out loud these 5 words. Yeah, these 5 words, and it reframes your reality. And at your worst moment, when you're so overwhelmed, you say, "Thank you for this opportunity," because you're telling the universe, then, I am grateful to see who I am under this pressure in this moment, because I'm going to learn from it, but I thank you for this opportunity to understand who I am in this circumstance, and then you're not a victim of it anymore. You're not a victim of someone else doing something that's fucked up your day, or whatever the thing is. But be grateful for the chance to understand and grow. And you can do almost anything.
Yeah. And even when you talk about on set, I think it's just, at the end of the day, it's just about treating people how you want to be treated. You know what I mean? I think that's so important. It's very fundamental. You know what I mean?
It's so simple, but America doesn't know how to do that anymore. America does not know how to do that.
No, I will say that is when I was lucky enough to have parents that really instilled that in me growing up. And it really does come down to whatever it is you want from the world, you cannot ask it if you're not willing to give it. Like it's sort of, no one's free until we're all free kind of stuff. It's like, I can't ask anything of the world that I can't give the world.
I totally agree. I mean,
and I feel like even though I think a lot of people feel like, I have a right to say this and I have a right to say that, I think the real power comes in restraint, you know what I'm saying, and not saying those things and having empathy and, saying, hold on, let me just push back, pull back a little and just, listen to what the person has to say.
Everyone feels they have the right to speak, but no one feels they have the need to listen.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to compress this next question because I always ask actors and directors this, where I ask them what was the film that truly, convinced you and knocked your socks off that you wanted to, start making films and making movies. And to go along with it, you said already, you were in high school, you were an honor student, you went to UCLA. But I found out in doing my research, this is why I love interviewing people and doing my research. I learned that, you had an encounter with Steven Spelberg, and he looked at your UCLA thesis, and that changed your life because you started to work on amazing stories. So I'm just kind of compressing it all into one.
That's a big question. Okay, absolute life-changing experience was at 5 years old when I saw a cartoon called Johnny Quest. And it was an episode about this invisible electric blob that they couldn't see, and they had to use their jetpacks and drop paint bags onto it so they could see this undulating menace that was eating electricity and killing people. And it scared the living shit out of me at 5. Wow. And somehow I knew in that moment of absolute adrenaline, I wanted life to always be that exciting. I wanted to live in that vibrating sense of engagement and be present like that, because I was so present. So Johnny Quest changed my life. It made me kind of an adrenaline hound. I'm already very wired, as you can tell. I don't drink coffee anymore even. So I'm always had a lot of energy. I'm an Aries and a lot of fire. So that started it. So about 5, I knew I wanted to tell stories. By 9, I had heard, even in my little town in Pennsylvania, my little industrial town in Pennsylvania, there was someone called a director, and they were in charge of telling stories. By 9, I wanted to direct. And there was no Premiere Magazine yet. I mean, Premiere Magazine has come and gone, but for a while, Premiere Magazine explained to the rest of us how Hollywood worked. Before there was a million, reality shows and channels and news, entertainment news channels. So by 9, I wanted to direct, and then that's all I focused on. I was like a young athlete. Like, I was able to say, this doesn't apply to what I want. This does. You know what I mean? I never meandered. I saved my money. I worked. I cleaned my father's doctor's office and saved $700 when I was 14, which is a shit. That's like $3,000 today. And I did it because they agreed to pay half of the movie camera I wanted to buy. It was a $1,400 movie camera in 1973 or whatever it was. And so bought my movie camera, started making movies, used that all through high school, made movies with friends, but the movie that actually so I was already on, Johnny Quest put me on the journey. The movie that focused the lens through which I became focused as a filmmaker was Jaws. Jaws electrified my brain on every level. I said it was funny, it was terrifying, it was cinematic, it was thrilling, it had everything. It was firing on every single cylinder. And I once had a chance to pitch on Steven Spelberg asked me to pitch on Small Soldiers. The movie, his sister had written the script and they were rewriting it. He wanted ideas to redevelop it. And I did this whole pitch. And then he says, no, you're asking, because I want it to be emotional and funny and thrilling. And he says, no, you're too ambitious. You want too much. I go, but you taught me to want that. You taught me to want that. How can you tell me I'm too ambitious? So anyways.
Steven Spielberg said to you, you're too ambitious. Wow.
Yes. Because I wanted that movie to have it all. And so I didn't get that gig. So I was going to rewrite that script and pitch on it and direct it.
You must be on a very short list of people that he has said that to, though. I mean, it's just like,
I don't know. I don't know why he would, maybe it just didn't work. I don't know. But so anyways, Jaws, I saw Jaws in movie theaters. Children, let me tell you, it wasn't on home video. There was no VHS tape. It would come out every summer. The movie would come out again. And so in theaters, and so I would go night after night after night after night. I saw that movie 250 times in theaters. And I would get bored. I would get bored watching it because I knew it so well. And so I would then started tapping my finger on my leg every time there was an edit. Just say, oh, that's a cut, that's a cut, that's a cut, that's a cut, that's a cut. Just a cut. And I started learning. Jaws was my master class about framing, and you watch it without sound. You kind of plug your ears and watch it. The best way to learn about movie making, by the way, is turn off the sound. If no one's ever told that to you, that's the way to do it, because you see the artifice. Sound creates this mental temporal continuity that your brain interprets everything as being connected. But you take the sound away and you realize the fragmentation of images and how it's all shot at different times and it's all random. But when your brain, the sound, you don't perceive sound outside of a linear temporal reality. You know what I mean? So sound is always consistent, it says one ongoing timeline. So anyways, Jaws, Lens, best advice I never got that stumbled into was go to film school in California because all your friends will get jobs. So I got accepted to USC. I took a gap year after high school. And I got accepted to USC for winter quarter, but they gave me like 2 weeks notice to move my whole life to California. And I was like, what the fuck, man? I've never even been to California. I can't leave my life in 2 weeks. So I turned them down. And they said, well, you might get in the university, but you may not get in the film school. And the truth was I didn't get in the film school the second time in the fall. But then UCLA said yes. And I was like, fuck SC. I was mad at them at that point. So I went to UCLA, which is the best thing that could have happened to me. Because the two schools have very different ideologies. One, USC is like, you want to make a movie? Fine, we'll pick a script, we'll pick a director, we'll pick a boom guy, we'll pick a different student you may want to direct, but you may be a boom guy on somebody else's movie, and that's your senior project. UCLA is like, you want to make a movie? Sure, go make a movie. Let us know how it turns out. You know what I mean? And you had to do it all. You had to inspire people. You had to they gave you a little bit of equipment, but no film, no money, but you owned it. And so I had a day job and I used my money, for my school money, my parents had set aside. I used that to pay for my film, Chicken Thing, which is in my Instagram bio if you want to watch it. But so I made the film. I always tell people, you want to fail on your own terms. You go, when you're gonna put yourself out there, fail on your own terms. I knew I had to get 10 minutes of film I could put on anybody's desk in this town and say, it's the best I can do, take it or leave it. And if it's not good enough, I guess I'm not good enough, you know? And so I got those 10 minutes of film. And then my friend, Danielle Black, she'd worked on Chicken Thing. And she had, in the time, I took 3.5 years to make this 12.5-minute movie. And you'll see it's very dense when you see it. I want it to be very complete. So she had gotten a job as assistant to Kathleen Kennedy in the meantime. So she called to get your film, and they're picking second season directors for Amazing Stories. So I went to the lab and pulled out the one print that existed. Nobody had seen this movie. The color timer and me. That's the only people seen this movie. So I took the print, took it over to Amblin, left it with Danelle, and she made sure that Stephen was shooting The Color Purple. She made sure that Deborah Jellin, his director of development, her name changed, she was screening student shorts, and Stephen walked in the door, per the story I was told, had been shooting The Color Purple and had not had a single free moment in months and months, walked in the door, had nothing to do, and said, where's Deborah? And somebody said, oh, she's screening student shorts in the screening room. And he walked in and sat down, and Chicken Thing screened, and he unsolicited, and he said, I want to meet this guy.
Wow.
That's incredible. That's amazing. I got to step in here because you're bringing up Amazing Stories. Yes. That is my favorite thing ever. And both of your episodes are so good, and they're so vastly different, and they both are kind of quintessential. The Welcome to My Nightmare, it really is sort of like what I'm watching anthology stuff to see, that kind of a story. But Thanksgiving is, that is pure Rod Serling. That is a pitch perfect, uncanny story, and it's gorgeous.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a good time.
Final frame, ugh.
I just found it actually.
Nice.
I was looking for something else for another podcast later in the week, and I found it with the commercials from the original broadcast. So I'm just transferring it with the original commercials and ins and outs and all that. So I was just transferring that from a DVD. But I had a good time. And the second Thanksgiving, the second one was my first time. I learned so much on Amazing Stories. Let me explain. So for me, as a director and a creative person and someone who always did everything, I thought of directing. When Chicken Thing, I wrote the script, I designed the shots, I designed the sets, I went to Home Depot and bought the lumber, I measured it all. So I thought of directing as a real hammer and tape measure kind of thing. Like it wasn't artsy fartsy, it was really practical, and because it was all about getting things done. And then Amazing Stories 1 comes up, and I'd written and I was directing, and other people were buying the lumber and building the sets. And they had to teach me that when I wanted to see a 35 millimeter, I would get up out of my chair to go get it. And they had to teach me, Todd, it's okay. We'll go get you the lens. Just tell us what you want. Because I was so used to doing it. And then Thanksgiving was the first time it wasn't my first original idea. I got to rewrite it and then direct it. But it was in the middle of this process. David Carradine came to me, and I was a very young looking 26-year-old, very young. So, and he was established, and he was like, he never said it, but the attitude was like, who the fuck are you? As we do in Hollywood as we get older, we all feel it. You got a 22-year-old agent, and you're like, what the fuck is this? Anyways, but, and I have a potty mouth, so sorry. But
okay. Quite all right.
So David asked me, I was intimidated by him. And he asked me, do you need me for this next shot? And I said, no. And he said, good, I'm going to go to my trailer, because we were way out in the boonies at that dusty ranch, whatever that was. And so he went to his trailer, and then we're shooting that shot in the fake well where we're at the bottom of the well looking up at Kearsarge. I said, would have been great if David was there to look over. And I didn't have the guts to call him out of his trailer when he'd asked me, and I'd said no. So I stuck to my decision, shot it. I kind of hated myself for it. The show turned out fine as it was, but what I realized in that moment, a lesson that served me my whole career, is that directing isn't a hammer and tape measure kind of thing at all. Directing is, I am paid to be this amorphous blob of instinct. I am paid to feel things. I'm paid to intuit things, and I'm paid to speak about what I feel. I'm paid to compel other people to understand what I'm feeling. And so it was a revelation to me to realize, because I'm so Aries practical with the hammer, that I get what this is. And it took a second job for me to understand that.
That's amazing. And that brings it back around to the idea of the how some directors get pulled into this ego thing, and it's, like you said, we're just answering questions. But that's the more unpacking. What you just said really unpacks that. The reason people are responding to confidence is because that is the job of a director. Like you said, that cloud of instincts.
Yeah, and just make sure people know what you want. And I learned on other movies that are more difficult. If you never waffle. Waffling, if you make a bad decision, just stick with it, keep going, and figure out how to fix it down the line. Indecision will destroy a company's momentum and confidence. So lots of lessons in these 30 plus years. So anyways, the Wizard. You want to talk about the Wizard? I know you do.
Yes, the Wizard. Now I just want to say this though. Like I miss shows like Amazing Stories. I grew up on that show. Just getting in front of the TV, being excited for it. I know they did a remake of it that was exclusively for Apple TV, and I enjoyed a few episodes of that as well. Especially the one with Robert Forster. Rest in peace to Robert Forster.
Yeah.
The Wizard. Starring Fred Savage, Jenny Lewis, who's like a musical superstar now, Luke Edwards, Beau Bridges, Christian Slater, and the late great Frank McRae, who I remember from this great movie called Batteries Not Included.
Oh yeah,
man. I gotta tell you, man. I it's like I remember exactly, like I remember like going to the movies, picking up my Pocket Power, mini magazine, and getting the snacks. And I think I was truly, you saw
it in the theater. You're old enough to have seen it in the theater, right?
Yeah, see, I watched it at the theater
absolutely.
With my stepfather, and I just remember Luke Edwards' character walking down the road with a lunchbox, because I always wanted a lunchbox. I never got one. I got one now,
amazing.
But
it's amazing.
But what really got me invested was the moment when they snuck on board a Hostess cupcake truck, and that was a big deal for me, because moving to North Carolina from New Jersey in the 80s, there was I grew up on Hostess snacks. There were no Hostess, there were no Ho-Hos, there were no fruit pies, no nothing, you know what I'm saying? No Famous Amos, none of that stuff. So seeing them hop on board of a Hostess truck really got me invested in the movie. And man, I love this movie, man. I mean, like, coming from a broken family myself, I could relate to that part. I can relate to, of course, my love for video games, but you beautifully captured the small town factor. I think it all takes place in Utah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that like I said resonated with me is like I was raised in a small town, Wilson, North Carolina, which is like 45 minutes away from Raleigh. And I could relate to so much, like the trucker hats, the way the kids dressed and everything. I wanted to know like how important it was for you to have it all take place in a small town like that of Utah. What was it like filming there?
Well, it's really funny. We actually shot it in Fallon, Nevada. And
Okay.
so it was written as a small town kids and go on a bit road trip. So I didn't really transplant that. I had a great impact on the script, and I can explain that later. But so we scouted Fallon, Nevada, and Fallon, Nevada at the time in 1989 was like this dusty little Western town, and I'm walking down, these guys are literally on a porch around a pickle barrel, like playing checkers practically. There were old dudes on a porch, and I'm walking down there with my binder and my super nice short 90 shorts, or 80 shorts. And I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And they said, "Scouting locations." And I went, "What?" In this tiny little Dust Bowl town. And I was like, those guys just asked me if I was scouting locations. Anyways, so it was set in a small town, so I can't claim credit for that. I love, of course, it's sort of a hero's journey trope, but come from the small town, go to the big city. It was my personal journey, actually, as a filmmaker. So there was that. But so many questions. So I can't claim credit for that, but I enjoyed the small town stuff. And admittedly, as I argued during the making of the movie and in the weeks of prep, because basically I had developed like 3 different features at Universal. Amazing Stories got me a sort of housekeeping deal, they call it, where I got an office and assistant. I wasn't paid anything, but I got an office and assistant at Universal. So in that time, I was developing movies for Universal, and I developed The Shadow, which I did not end up making. On the script that I was developing was not the one that was shot. I developed a movie called Welcome to Buzzsaw, which was shot with an actor who wouldn't even meet me, Matthew Broderick, and it was called something else. It was called, I forget what it's called, honestly. Matthew Broderick and Heidi Kling I don't think it's called Welcome to Buzzsaw, but that one was made with the script I developed. And so I did a lot of heartbreaks. We were in deep prep on that one with an office and scouting and production designer, and they all fell apart as movies do. And I wanted to make a movie. So I read The Wizard on a Thursday. I met on a Friday, and I was prepping on Monday, and I was shooting 35 days later. Like, it was like shot out of a gun. You're making a movie and you're shooting in 35 days. It's all distant location. Everything's on the road. So we were scouting from day one. I was so blessed. I found Mally Finn. I don't even know how I found Mally Finn. Mally Finn is no longer with us, but she remained this tremendous casting director. She cast Terminator movies, the Cameron movies. She did Titanic. She did.
Wow.
She had 2 big directors. And I was not one of them. James Cameron and another one, I'm blanking on it right now, but the most gracious, talented woman with a total eye for talent. Fred was obviously attached, no one else was cast yet. So I had to get Bo and Christian on board. And then we found Luke through casting and auditioning. He was 9 at the time. So it's a tough role. It was a nonverbal role. So really had to make sure he could do that kind of nonverbal stuff. It's not easy for kids typically. And then we couldn't find the girl. And I'm jumping a little bit in your question. So could not find the girl. And I found this little girl out of Brooklyn or the Bronx or somewhere who I loved, and Universal thought she wasn't pretty enough. And they had this little Texas beauty queen who I said couldn't act her way out of a paper bag. And so we're at this impasse where I had the great actor they didn't think was cute enough, and they had the cutie pie doll who couldn't act, and so I brought Mally and I brought the little Texas girl in, and I did every theater improv game I could possibly do with her to see if there was a kernel of anything there. Said absolutely not. I cannot cast this girl. I can't do it. And so out of the blue, Jenny was not available, and something fell apart, and she suddenly was available, and she came in, and she was this perfect middle ground of super cute, resilient, really talented young actor, really fun to work with. She's amazing. So I'm not surprised she's had another career, but I'm surprised she just never acted beyond a certain point. But she was great. And so she really was this magical last minute find for the movie. And Christian was 19. I think he'd done Heathers, and Bo was, of course, well established. And Christian had just done, I think, the Fabulous Baker Boys. And the only reason he really took the movie was he worked with Jeff Bridges and he wanted to work with Bo. You know what I mean? So I got Christian to do it. And he's such a great cast. And the nicest compliment they paid to me was we were doing some of the family stuff in the house, which a lot of it got cut out of the movie. But Bo and Wendy Phillips and Sam McMurray, they came to me and said, we want you to direct us someday in a grown-up movie. And I went, oh, that's the nicest thing you could say. But, I love kids. I love kids' adventures. I love kids' movies. I'm doing Monster High, the musicals,
right.
And because as a kid, what saved me was high stakes adventures and where kids are empowered. And that's what I saw the Wizard as being. And Casey Silver, the president of Universal, in that moment, he told me they didn't want me. They didn't want a fancy young filmmaker. They wanted like a TV dude who was just going to direct the nice little movie and make the sausage. And I convinced him. I said, no, I'm the right person for this. I said, I want this. And so I always believe I was fighting for a bigger movie than anybody actually was aspiring to on The Wizard from the beginning. And then I had the script and I sat down with David Chisholm, the writer, and I said, saying, David, right at the script I got, Luke was just wandering. He's just wandering and nobody knows why. And I suggested, well, what if he's saying something nobody understands? What if he's saying like California, and what if nobody knows what that means? Because it has no relevance to their story. But it propels people forward to make make assumptions, and they're all trying to figure out what it means. And what if at the end maybe they're leaving the competition, because it kind of just ended at the competition like Karate Kid kind of. It had a very abrupt ending. Right. You win and then there's nothing else to watch. I said, what if at the end they're driving on the 10 and they pass those dinosaurs in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and he gets out and I explained the whole thing about this is the last place they were together as a family. And the whole time, the little troubled kid that everybody thinks is so perverse, is the only one that actually had his act together. He's trying to process his grief. And he needs to get to this place where he knows they were happy and the injuries to this family had not manifested. And so they agreed to put it in the movie. And David wrote it and we started shooting. And we shot in Nevada first. And with California, it's been repeated. We get to the Universal sequence. We come down to Southern California. We're shooting at Universal Studios. I remember this like yesterday. We're shooting the chase on the tram, which is not easy to shoot at Universal anyway. And it's not easy to do stunts with children. They weren't dangerous stunts, but all stunts with children are incredibly precarious because they're kids. So, and my producers come to me and tell me the Universal, by then we were really at odds. We had had a couple of weeks, we'd fallen apart as a relationship in the 4 weeks prior. And they said, Universal doesn't want to shoot the ending at the dinosaurs. I'm like, what are you talking about? We've already shot we baked in all the setup. So if you don't shoot the ending, you have to cut that all out. But if we shoot the ending, we can see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then you can cut it all out. So basically I said, I'm shooting the ending of this movie. I'm shooting the end of this movie. And nobody stopped me, unbelievably. We went to the dinosaurs. I said, it wasn't well written. I said, I need changes, and nobody would listen to me. So I wrote that last scene the night before. I had one copy of it because they were in an era where it was on my dot matrix printer, my Apple dot matrix printer. And I took it to set and I told every actor, here's what you say, here's what you say, here's what you say, here's what you say. Right. And that's what we shot. Because David Chisholm, the writer, wouldn't support any part of shooting that scene. So And it's the part of the movie that people remember. I think, short of a Super Mario Brothers 3, I think it's the part of the movie that is most satisfying.
It's the soul. It's absolutely the soul of that movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, Chris. What are you about to say?
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, I was saying, yeah, that's the soul of that movie completely. That's insane to me that that wasn't always part of that story because it's so fundamental. And I gotta say, I love that your original inspiration to make movies was Jaws because that's a very Jaws-esque story that you just told, including the writing it the night before.
Yeah, no, it's very Jaws. And then the way the script actually ended, like I just honestly I can't fathom this to this day. They're leaving the competition, short driving scene. Kids are in the back of the truck, like I had them. Jimmy throws his lunchbox over a bridge and it lands in a river.
Oh no!
And this is the lunchbox remains of this little sister who drowned in front of him. And I was like, it can't end that way. That's a horrifying ending. He so disrespects this lunchbox. Like her stuff was always in the lunchbox. I didn't create that, but giving it a payoff that was respectful and kind of tie and. The brilliance of it, honestly, is that the youngest person, the one people trust the least with their emotional state, has their shit tighter wired than all the grown-ups. The grown-ups are all so messed up, and they have to learn a lesson from a 9-year-old, and that's what made that movie special, I think.
Absolutely, I agree with Chris too, because like if that ending would, like you were just talking about how they threw it on, I think that would have been really, like you said, disrespectful, man, and because that part. Where it just all comes together perfectly, and it totally makes sense for him to leave it at that dinosaur park. And I'm glad you brought that up because Pee-wee's Big Adventure is like another one of my favorite movies. I wanted to know, like, okay, so Fred Savage, like at the time, was like, on the Wonder Years, he was like a really, really big star. So was there any but a lot of the weight of the movie falls on Luke Edwards' performance, which I think he was really, really phenomenal. So was there ever first question is, are there any special qualities that both actors have that made them so special and perfect for their roles? But also, like, was there ever a point where it's like, did Fred audition for the character or the main character? Or he didn't get the part, and then he tried out for the character of Corey, or how did that all work out?
No, Fred, I mean, basically the Sausage Factory, Fred Savage, Nintendo. What could kids want more? You know what I mean? So those two elements were baked in from the very beginning. Fred Savage and meets Nintendo. Fred was in that era of incredibly charismatic actor. He still is, but he's very charismatic and he's very winning, and he could only play Corey. He's too old to play Jimmy, quite frankly, So Jimmy had to be more damaged, and Fred had the sort of chops to pull it off and to spar with. That's why oh my God, I'm going to call her Haley. Well, Jenny was so great because she had the weight to stand up to Fred,
Right. Yeah.
They were equals, and you had to find somebody who was equal to Fred because Fred has a lot of presence and a lot of charisma. And so it was never, he was always part of the package. I was always on a Fred Savage movie. His Wonder Years company came along. Half the crew was from the Wonder Years, and the other half I hired. I'd done Vietnam War story for HBO with Bob Yeoman, who's famous for the Wes Anderson movies now, the cinematographer of every Wes Anderson movie on the planet. And so Bob and I bonded as a DP and cinematographer. And then I hired my first ADs, and I think the rest of the crew, the production designer was Michael Mayer, but the rest of the crew was probably from the Wonder Years. And that just was easy to do. And they were all on hiatus. And we had a very specific schedule. We had to finish Fred by that last date of July or something. So he could have a week off and then go back to the Wonder Years at August 12th or something like that. You know what I mean? It was a very specific window where I was hired very late and it had to shoot. So there was never they never competed with each other. Fred was kind of great with Luke. Luke was, quiet, young kid. He is from a divorced family, and so he kind of had a very emotional aura that surrounded him. I'll tell you one true story, but he hated his oversized clothing. He hated it. And I didn't know that until we were already sort of on the journey. You know what I mean? And so now he doesn't want to come out of his trailer and he doesn't want to be seen in these big oversized shirts. And I had to sit him down at 9 and go, Luke, here's the deal. Your characters are on a journey. There's no place to get other clothes. But if you can help me get to Reno, when we get to Reno, you guys are going to get some money and then you're going to get new clothes. Can we do that? And he said yes, and we did. We got to Reno, and you'll see all his wardrobe changes when we get to Reno because he hated those big, sloppy, oversized things, you know. So he had strong opinions. He was very quiet, but that's what worked, is his intensity. I mean, I worked with a ton of kids, and Luke had the ability to hold the lens and hold a gaze and appear intense playing those games in a way that a lot of kids can't.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Because you realize none of those games worked. I mean, Luke isn't playing anything. You know what I mean? He's pretending to play everything.
I noticed that like when they get to the video Armageddon part and he's playing Ninja Gaiden and he stops and the game is still playing.
Oh really? Oh,
yeah.
I had to pick those clips and they were all transferred to film. All the video clips were transferred to film, and then we only had that one piece of film we could play because they're all projected, you know?
Oh wow. So okay, this is the first time in North America we get a first glimpse of Super Mario Brothers 3. And for anybody who might be younger than, you know, us watching and don't understand how big of a deal that was, I remember watching the trailer of that film, and I almost when they showed that the screenshot of Super Mario Brothers 3, I almost didn't think it was real. I was like, is that really happening? And then I had a subscription to Nintendo Power, and they were like pushing this movie like gangbusters, you know what I'm saying? And I cannot explain to you the moment when that announcer was really great. I forgot his name. He had a lot of energy.
Steven something, I don't know. Yeah.
Super Mario Brothers 3. And it goes, dun, 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 dun. I mean, dude, every kid in America was locked in, man. Like, because it's the first time you see the Mario Brothers 3 game, the first time you see a Mario game with a map screen, and the music, everything was just like, you're completely locked in. It's like one of the best, like, third acts, man, ever, man. How were you able to get, and this is the question that I had, but also a friend of mine, shout out to Brooks, and he had the same question. Was it difficult to get that premiere footage of the game, or feature that game in the movie? And were there any other games in mind?
I get asked this a lot, and I don't remember, because always Fred Savage and Nintendo. It was always an intense handshake from the idea, you know, that Nintendo would be providing, you know, special content for this movie. So it was always Super Mario Brothers 3 to my knowledge. And I have very few records of this. There's a box of my stuff that I think I lost that had all my Wizard stuff in it. So I don't have a lot of it anymore. But yeah, it was always Super Mario Brothers 3. And we knew it was a big deal. I'll be honest, I sold myself as the director, saying I'm not a gamer, so I have to make it interesting to me. So as a non-gamer, and I said, if I can make it interesting to me, I can bring anybody into this movie. I'm not going to do it from an insider's kind of point of view. We're going to do it from an outsider's point of view and still make it fascinating, you know, because you want people that don't play the game to understand the movie journey as well. So,
so it's funny because I think me and E-Man both are in this category where we're of an age where that movie was made for me and my friends at that point in time. And
yeah,
I somehow made it into a theater with no idea about Super Mario 3, and it was packed. And I can tell you, when he said that, and Super Mario Brothers 3, there were just bodies flying through the theater, man. It was just an explosion. People were like,
heck yeah. Heck yeah.
I love that. You know what's funny about these stories is that I was explicitly told that The Wizard was a total flop, that nobody saw it. Yeah, Wizard was a total flop. And when the movie came out on DVD 20 years later, Universal didn't even tell me it was coming out on DVD. Like, I had no warning. There was nothing special on that first DVD, as you know. You know, I suddenly started tracking it on Twitter, and I went, "Oh my God, people like this movie." Like, I took 20 years because I couldn't I was in movie jail after The Wizard. Like, I couldn't get a job for 7 months. You know, nobody would hire me to do anything. And so, because it just didn't meet their expectations. They thought it was going to blow up in some, way, and then you just get movie jail. So, but it's thrilling. It's thrilling to realize as a filmmaker, I was trying to entertain you. I was specifically trying to entertain you. How old were you, Chris, when you saw it?
Oh, would have been 9.
Yeah.
My parents.
How old were you,
too.
Emmanuel?
My parents loved it.
Around 12, I believe.
Yeah. So I was trying to tell stories to the kids that love those kind of adventure stories, and maybe you did, you didn't, but I was trying to tell those stories that electrified me as a kid, those wish fulfillment stories. When I got to run behind the back scene workings of King Kong, that was like the best thing ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To see the pistons and the King Kong doesn't work that way anymore, kids. It's all digital now, but King Kong was like giant pistons and we added steam and flame and stuff. So anyways, I'm thrilled to hear I reached the kids that I meant. It took 20 years for me to figure that out.
Man, that's sad, but I'm glad you did eventually know. Will you rate my Christian Slater impersonation real fast?
Okay, go ahead.
Ready?
This ought to be good.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
The eyebrows are amazing. I can't believe you could do that. It's good. It's really good.
Oh, that's really good. Hilarious. I didn't expect that at all.
Yeah.
So okay. There's a part of the movie, but I want to go back because there's a part in the movie where Fred, he's like, when he's like taking some darts and throwing them against the map. Was that slightly inspired by the movie Mask with Eric Stoltz? Because there's a part where he has a mapping, but he uses thumbtacks. Was that scene slightly inspired? I
don't know. That was in the script, so I can't tell you where the origin of it came from. That was in the script. So okay. So the writer might have been inspired by that, but we never talked about it.
Okay, because that's exactly where my mind goes. So it goes to that, and of course Goonies. I always think of Goonies when it comes to like adventures and everything like that. There's a part of the movie too where Haley or Jenny says, get the star, and he gets the star, and Jimmy and Luke does this thing where like all gamers do, like they kind of move their body along with the motion that's going on screen. Was that like improvised or what?
No, Luke did a lot of that stuff on his own. Luke was very intuitive. He was very intense as a young kid. So he's very focused. I will tell you this: we did cut the movie, and then I had to cut an hour out of the movie because I kept arguing that the script was too long. It was too long. And I contractually could deliver no movie longer than 90 minutes. It couldn't be longer than 90 minutes by contract. So then we get this in the cutting. It's 2.5 hours long. And I said, I kept telling you guys, we shot so much more movie than we could ever use. And it's all the small town stuff. There's 3 best friends. And those boys all got cut out of the movie. And I wrote them letters at the time because there's no email. Wow. I said, dudes, you have to know it's not you. You did a great job. But I want you to know now, before you tell your friends you're in this movie, I need you to know you're not in this movie anymore because it just was too long. So I'm really sorry. But I want you to know early before you start get excited. So it was terrible. But so that's all on that. And remarkably, when we did this, when I say Loud House, what are they called? What's the video company that released the special edition? Anyways, when they were collecting materials, I called Universal, and to their credit, they actually listened because they've never given The Wizard any kind of attention or love. And they listened and they asked, I went to the head of post and I said, I'm trying to find the missing hour of footage. And they went to their salt mine in Nevada, wherever they keep all this stuff. And it is like a salt mine or something like that. And they actually found it really quickly. Like our cataloging is so that 30 years later, they could find the film, and then we had to pay to transfer it. It's sound, but it's not music. It's not fancy looking, but they actually found the missing hour. Not every foot of it, because sometimes it was taken out in smaller chunks, and those smaller chunks were lost. But that whole hour that was taken, that whole 40 minutes was taken out as a whole cloth. That they had that. So that's in the extras because they actually made the effort to go find it. So
we don't get a chance to see his twin sister, but there's a picture of her.
Yeah.
Is that his real life sister? Because they kind of look alike. No,
that's good casting.
Oh yeah, that's great casting.
Yeah, so those are all local kids. And the funny story about that, The Wizard Goes On and On, is that the kid who played, oh my God, I can't believe I forget his name. The kid who played young Christian Slater was later in a TV show I made, and he took him a long. I cast him. Oh my God, I have to look it up. Sorry. He took him a while to admit it, but we're shooting. We got picked up. There's a show called Misguided, and Chris Palaha comes to me on set of our TV show that we're doing together. He says, I've met you before. And I was like, what? And he goes, you cast me in to be young Christian Slater in the family photos you shot for the backstory of the wizard, because he lived in Reno. And I was like, what? So I went and found the pictures and I brought him to set. I said, oh my God, it is you. It was really funny. And the other weird story is Tobey Maguire is an extra. He's one of Lucas's buddies. Never heard the name Tobey Maguire, didn't know he was there. He's an extra who knew there's 10,000 kids. But it's amazing that I took Twitter to tell me that too. I didn't know that.
Wow. There's because I was just about to mention Tobey Maguire, but just real quick, how can people reach you?
The best way to reach me is through DMing me, probably on Instagram. Twitter is not my favorite place to be. It's kind of like a cesspool. So Instagram, I'm not great at DMs. But you reached me through my manager. So that became a much more direct. I see DMs every couple of months. So it's like sending a snail mail letter to overseas or something when you send me a DM. But that's probably the best, most efficient way, unless you're inventive like Emmanuel.
I appreciate that. And I just want to say, this whole podcast is about, giving a person their flowers. And I want to say thank you so much for making a movie was a big, because when I think of this movie, it always puts a smile on my face. I think about Saturday mornings. I think about playing video games, and it always makes me happy. And I just want to say thank you for making such a gem of a movie. And also thank you for your time today and, being so gracious and asking, answering all these questions. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your whole point of view of gratitude, which is, you've heard already, that's one of my big things. You're grateful for the entertainment you've been given. And I tell my company, I said, look, there's can be no bad apples here because we have good jobs. We have good jobs. We're paid a good wage. I mean, there's a lot of strikes going on now, so things have to get better. But we have doing jobs we love, and we need to approach them with gratitude and joy. Basically, one of my big lessons teaching directing to Directors Guild members is I have a triangle of, it's like protect your joy, hone your craft, expand your network, repeat. And the biggest thing that we never spoke of, it came to me through designing this education program, but we never speak at the Directors Guild of America about joy, about protecting your joy. Because this town, this business, as the struggle as a young filmmaker trying to break in, all of it just is trying to chisel away your joy. And if you lose your joy, you're done. You got nothing to offer. I tell all the young directors, because I was teaching people to be TV directors, and you go to have a meeting as a journeyman episodic director. Nobody wants to see a lot of anger. Nobody wants to meet with angry people who feel cheated or resentful. And I was teaching specifically women and people of color who've been excluded. I ran diversity inclusion for the Directors Guild for 6 years and designed this program to lift women and people of color into episodic television jobs. I said, I know a bunch of angry women. I'd say, look, I know you've been beating your head against the door for 10, 20, maybe even 30 years, but this is your moment. So you got to find your joy. If you miss your joy, no one's going to hire you. This moment's going to pass you by. So I appreciate the whole foundational concept behind your podcast, which is gratitude. And I think that's really smart. And it speaks to you and who you are as a person.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate your time. And of course, I appreciate Chris. I thank you for coming on, being my co-host. I know you're busy as well. I appreciate you.
Not too busy for this.
I appreciate